really a disloyal person.
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Troy Nunes' Not This Podcast. This is the Disloyal Idiots.
We went so long without making that mistake.
Oh,
So
God.
long. We got used to it and everything.
And I saw the further Nunes connection in Mike, and here we are. This is Steve Haller with the Disloyal Idiots. Joining me as always, Christian Guzman. Andy Pregler still on a milk carton somewhere, and we've got Troy Nunes' Absolute Magician staff writer Mike Ostrowski on. Joining us as a special guest, frequent special guest. What's going on, guys?
Well, I see Christian got the memo to wear red today.
It's my morning color, obviously, because your baseball team's moving on. Mine isn't.
We have a baseball team, Christian?
You make great points.
I didn't think a season started until April. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can just enjoy yourself, Mike. It's fine.
I feel worse than 2016.
Hey,
I don't know why.
I lived through a 10-year drought. I deserve a little happiness.
I lived through the 80s Yankees. I mean, I also got the 90s Yankees, but yeah.
Yeah. But also 80s Yankees, that was when only two teams from each league made it to the playoffs, right?
Yeah, we still wouldn't have.
Oh, good.
There were some bad stretches through there. But
Good.
here we are. You know what else happens in bad stretches?
Penalties.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what happened against Clemson?
Penalties.
Yes. Here we go. If anyone was living under a rock, Syracuse football lost last week, and by last week I mean yesterday, to Clemson 31-14. Call me crazy, but the score seemed worse than what we saw on the field, seeing they were still in it in the fourth quarter. But we got a lot to unpack on this one. So since Christian mentioned it, do we want to just dive right in on penalties and or various control the controllables, coach speak things that could have been fixed?
Yeah, because I feel like this was a game that Clemson did not win and Syracuse very much lost. This was a game where it was clear throughout the entirety of the game that this is not the same Clemson team that Syracuse has been used to facing over the past 15 years or so. Like, I think all three of us can agree on that point. However, of course, that makes it the most winnable Clemson game in quite some recent memory. Unfortunately, the things that we saw in games like last year, which kept Syracuse in games, didn't happen in this particular contest against Clemson. And it probably ruined Syracuse's best chance in the short term, at least, of another win over the cream of the crop of the ACC.
Yeah, and for anyone who watched the game, the first two series were a microcosm of what was going to happen for the rest of the game, of Syracuse doing everything they could to stop Syracuse, and Garrett Schrader finding a way to not look like Garrett Schrader, and stupid penalties coming back to bite the orange. In the case of the first two series, it would be a penalty called against Clemson that apparently was not a penalty for whatever reason. I did not see a replay on it. Anybody who wasn't in the dome.
There was helmet-to-helmet contact, but because I know Steve and Mike were both in the dome, there was a clear replay that showed there was helmet-to-helmet contact. The only thing that I could see maybe the refs were like wasn't targeting is that the helmet-to-helmet contact came in the lower part of the helmet, and it wasn't like a flush helmet-to-helmet contact.
Yeah, last I checked in the rule, there's nothing that states what part of the helmet has to make contact with what.
Yes, and and there was I think one of the Cuse video production staff members or someone affiliated or who had a media credential who posted slow motion footage of that hit on social media, and the head isn't supposed to snap back like that.
No, it's not.
Let's put it that way simply.
Yeah, I guess how he stayed in the game at that point and wasn't immediately in concussion protocol also confuses me. But whether it was whiplash or concussion or something, he wasn't running the tightest ship before, and it definitely wasn't as tight after either.
Yeah, and Go ahead, Mike.
Go ahead, sorry. Gino said post game that he went through concussion protocol. Personally, I don't know how you can do that so quickly.
I was going to say that's the quickest concussion protocol I've ever seen.
Especially since that immediate Clemson offensive series was like 5 plays.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And then on the very first play of the next series, on just a regular halfback toss, Schrader did not exactly have the cleanest toss to Allen, fumble taken back. That already did not look like a great sign that he was 100% at that point.
Right. Yeah, there was definitely a toss. There wasn't much of a directionality or a catch to it. So, yeah. Either way, I mean, it's not on us to prognosticate injuries or any of that sort of thing. Well, I guess it technically is. That's kind of part of what we do. But it one way or another, whatever was up, Garrett Schrader was not playing to the level we had seen him in the past and have seen this year. I don't know if there's any other way to slice it than a lot of what happened. What this team is riding or dying on what Garrett Schrader can do at this point.
Especially now that it's kind of clear what the Syracuse game plan has to be, just given the amount of weapons that is available to Schrader. Because now what we're seeing with this offense is that it's really heavily impacted, more so than we thought, due to the injuries to Arande Gadsden and Isaiah Jones. Because Syracuse doesn't have a guy it necessarily trusts to make a catch over the middle. Whether that's route running, spacing-wise, positioning-wise, physicality-wise, athleticism-wise, hands-wise, there's something among the wide receiver core that is currently left that means that the routes over the middle or the targets over the middle that we saw Schrader excel with last year are not available to the Orange, just based on the personnel that is available. And so when you need to go to the passing game, what we saw a lot in the Clemson game is that you need to go down the sideline because that's the strengths of your wide receivers. And in a way, yes, you have to play to the strengths of the talent that is available. Unfortunately, the wide receiver strengths and the quarterback strengths are not synchronized. And what we saw and what has continued to be a trend throughout Schrader's Syracuse career is that his sideline accuracy is not the greatest. I mean, you heard Dave Pasha and Dusty Dvorak on the broadcast consistently saying that, the wide receivers could probably catch, or were probably in good positions to catch sideline passes. It's just that the majority of Schrader's sideline passes were taking them out of bounds or out of position.
Right. And that was, that sideline accuracy is something that he's struggled with a lot over the years. But when you also have some targets to open things up over the middle, it may give you a little more space to be a little more forgiving, not have to put it on the dime on the outside like he needed to, especially against the quality of coverage we were seeing. But yeah, every one of those passes, and from my seat, it's literally down the sideline. Every single one of those was like a half yard out of bounds or like a yard out of bounds that would force the wideout to come down, a step out of bounds. And it was just that little off made all the difference in the world.
And so now we get into this really interesting place with the offense about how they opened it up the rest of the way. Because we always preach, especially on the website and just in general around us, that, again, you have to play to your strengths. So do you have to, and from what we've seen, again, Schrader can't really throw accurately down the sideline. So how do you correct that? Do you move over to the slot, which is ultimately maybe the decision that has to come, and just live with Hatcher, Brown, and maybe hopefully Trevor Pena down the sideline? Is it okay? We'll just keep throwing it down the sideline and maybe open up Liquin Allen on more flat routes like we saw a little bit more towards the second half?
No, you know what we saw? we saw you can use Dan Villari as a nice. Oh wait, he's hurt.
And I was going to get to that. We can't do that anymore. It was so nice for 10 minutes, literally 10 minutes of Syracuse and Central New York realizing that
during that time he managed to break about 7 or 8 tackles. So
you know what it was.
10
You know what it was. It's Dino Babers is probably a very online person, and so when he heard the news about Taylor Swift's new interest in her life, he probably realized, hey, that guy actually plays football. What does he play? Oh, tight end. What is that position?
We can use one of those. Whoa. Is that what we've been calling that tall guy on our team? Oh, okay. Yeah. No, and I'm glad since Mean Girls is just finished up its run in Syracuse. I am very glad that I did not stop trying to make Thunder Dan happen, because it seemed to have come to fruition that Thunder Dan Marley was the new fetch, or Thunder Dan Villari rather. He looked good. He looked good in varying positions. What was up with the pass?
The pass. The
Donovan dropped it.
Yeah, the one that Donovan dropped.
Yeah,
because it was right to him. Yeah. He had 2 guys open. Could choose either one. He had Donovan Brown and Quinn Allen both open for a touchdown.
Yeah, and
unfortunately, the guy he threw it to dropped it.
Our wideouts never drop balls. Come on.
2 weeks ago. Well, okay.
Exactly.
So there is a reason why we're not talking much about Daniel Villari, and it's because, once again, the unfortunate thing about Syracuse football has reared its ugly head again, and it's not the penalties, it's not the offense, it's the injuries,
the owies,
indeed owies, because not only is Dan Villari out, people that we thought might be coming back are also probably not coming back for a long time.
Yeah. So we were very excited against Army when we saw Jabbar Pena suit up and receive kicks and do things that were fun and football related. And then he didn't show up on the depth chart, and we thought it was just Dino being Dino because, I've written those depth chart articles for many years and still have never gleaned any actual information from them. That doesn't mean don't go read them, but you're not going to get a whole hell of a lot out of them. But he's apparently out for a bit, it seemed. I don't know if there was anything more than he's just out, Mike, or if it was Dino Baker.
He re-aggravated whatever his previous injury was. That's as much as we got out of Dino.
Which means it was really great idea to trot him out against Army.
And it was a really great idea to it probably was because he probably didn't have much choice to trot out Kalen Ellis against Clemson, because I think we all know, we all knew, at least I did, and I hope everyone else did, at the beginning of the season that the biggest weakness of this team was the offensive line. And it didn't help that Kalen Ellis, who was supposed to be the one known factor on this line, was hurt at the beginning of the season. And unfortunately, hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. And unfortunately, it looks like Syracuse had to rush him back.
I don't know about that. So,
okay. Or so
this is
because I'm going to predicate this by saying that Ellis did not look like he had a great game. Now, is that mainly the injury or is that rust?
Yes.
Cool.
I think it's a combo of both. I think you have your first game action of the year against Xavier Thomas.
That's a great thing to happen.
Let's throw him over you to start your season. Good luck.
It's not like you have to face that again this season. Don't look what's happening in 2 weeks. But it's not like you have to do that again.
Right. Now, that said, this was the best defensive front they will see. However,
2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now is maybe if this is like an A plus, they're like an A half plus in 2 weeks.
Well,
So
the thing is, in 2 weeks from now, by the way, for those who don't know what we're talking about, 2 weeks from now is Florida State, and a projected top 3 pick in the draft is on the opposing defensive line.
mhm. Yeah, minor.
Probably the first non-quarterback off the board is on the opposite defensive line. He is shooting up boards that quickly.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he is. And again, for those who don't know what I'm talking about, it's former Syracuse transfer target Jared Verse.
Yeah, he gonna be good. But thankfully for Kalen Ellis, he tends to play a little wider than what he should see. He may catch him on some doubles.
This
I
is
pray
true.
for
It would be nice if we had both of our starting tackles in prime pristine condition. Oh, wait, our starting one is out for the season.
Mhm. Yep. So situation normal. Nothing to we're living the dog sitting in the middle of the fire gif here. This is fine. And according to our friends at PFF, we had all but three technically, because they came in garbage time. But of our starters, 3 of them were below the Mendoza line in run blocking or pass blocking. And when I say that, I don't mean like they were at 58. Jacob Bradford, our starting right guard, graded out at a 16.3. Kalen Ellis graded out as a 36.9, and Mark Petrie at a 43.1. Enrique Cruz actually graded out as a 48.5. So
Still below.
Yeah. So 4 out of 5. Sorry, I misspoke. Chris
And
Blythe,
remember, for those of you who do not know PFF grading stats, 60 is the Mendoza line, not 50. And when we say Mendoza line, we mean the base grade that a player starts with if they do not play for a game.
Right. So yeah, Blythe was our only one above at this point.
Junior Reed, shout out to
Oh yeah, January Reed was
Johnny
at
Reed.
66. So who didn't take snaps that something's
it's because Blythe moved over. It's
list
because Blythe moved over to right guard after the first
there.
2
Yep.
series when Ellis went in. Yes.
Yep. Okay. Pieces of the puzzle are coming back.
Yeah, and that's what we also expected when Ellis would return, is that Blythe would also move over to right guard. So you would also hope that if Ellis is back full time, hopefully, that you have that continuity at least. And that's what you probably expect the line to be for the rest of the season. It's going to be from left to right: Cruz, Ellis, Reed, Blythe, Petrie.
Yes.
And then hopefully you can build.
No.
Unless Joe Moore ever.
Joe Moore did
he's
play
been
5.
suited up.
Joe Moore played 5 snaps.
I think he is probably going to be next man in on the right side, no matter what type thing. Similar to like he and Aloha both got in for 5 snaps. That's why I was saying, and Ho got in for 5 as well. Why I was saying they came in garbage time, but yeah, I don't know. Joe Cruz got 8 somehow.
Cruz is one of the offensive linemen that Syracuse brings in for their jumbo package.
Gotcha.
So whenever Syracuse wants to run the Philadelphia Eagles tush push, Cruz is the extra offensive lineman that they bring in.
Which seems weird to me, but hey, whatever.
But it's worked. I mean, it's worked.
100%. And it would have worked again if it wasn't for penalties.
Mm-hmm.
Should we segue into that?
I mean, I think we've beaten that bush enough already.
Have we though? There's been so many instances where stupidity, like,
yes,
that's the thing. That's the thing. It's not just penalties. It's the stupid penalties that we've been told how many times now would have been addressed.
Yeah.
And this is the only problem why I'm not beating the bush around it too much. It's because yes, we've seen it, but I don't know if I have faith in Dino to solve it. And unfortunately, I think that's just a problem we're going to have to live with, which, as unfortunate as it sounds, that's the kind of reality that we're in. And Syracuse was the most penalized team in the FBS last year. I'm not sure where they're ranking right now, but they're it's probably trending towards that path again.
I feel again, this is just look test, but I feel like they're better than last year.
Yeah, no, definitely, but
They're-
especially after the last couple of games, it's trending.
I know they're not one at the moment because I believe they only had one against Army.
Fewest penalty yards per game. Nope, wrong way. Wrong direction.
Nope, wrong way.
No, we're 124. Okay, cool.
So that is bottom 10 or bottom 11, something like that.
It's
Bottom 10.
124 out of 130.
So that is sixth.
Yep.
We have the sixth most penalties in the FPS,
And that's by yards per game. So
and that's by yards per game. What about total amount?
the NCAA's stats are really dumb.
I'm going to look that up. But Steve, I know you want to ramble about this. So I'll let you ramble about this while I look this up. Because, again, this is a problem that we've consistently seen, especially now over the past couple of years. And it's not just limited to one side of the ball. I mean, yes, you could say that a couple of calls were weird. And I think a lot of people agree that the refs didn't have a great game. We kind of already went over that. But at the same time, you can't put yourself in the position to allow the refs to make any type of 50-50 call.
Yeah, and that's definitely one thing that needs to be worked on. See Wax, Marlowe. Yes, Cade Klubnik flopped worse than Joe Girard last year, but you can't put yourself in that situation. Yes, the offensive line had a couple of false starts that it shouldn't have had. The aforementioned jumbo package that went the way of the Buffalo because of that. Especially against a team like Clemson, you can't shoot yourself in the foot that many times and expect something to actually happen positively. I don't know where that takes us for the rest of the year and where this will trend. And I'm not going to lie, when I looked up that yardage statistic, I did not think we would be that low in the rankings. I figured we'd be, low mid-table. But it's definitely a problem that keeps rearing its ugly head, much like injuries. And I mean, I don't know what to do about it. Like there was a couple of PIs that, okay, some of them were valid, some of them were questionable. You're going to get that any game, but especially playing against much better athletes, those I can at least accept. But it's the controlling the controllables thing that really is that's the crux of this whole issue.
Okay, I have good news and bad news.
Okay.
What do you guys want first?
Vegetables.
We'll take the Steve wants the good and bad news. Mike wants the good news.
It's podcast standard to go vegetables first. So.
Yeah, it is podcast standard that we must go bad news first. The bad news, in terms of total penalties, amount of penalties this season, Syracuse is tied for 116th in terms of penalties, which means, and I should have said fewest penalties, because Syracuse has 40 penalties called this season. That is tied with 5 teams at 14th on the list in terms of most penalties this year. So we are creeping close. The good news is a two-parter. One, Syracuse has 40 penalties. UMass leads the way with 54. So we would have to do a lot to catch up to them for the number one spot. And the other part of the good news is that Syracuse is only the 3rd most penalized team in the ACC.
Oh,
and now we get to play our favorite game. Who are the other two? And you could probably guess them.
Well, I have it pulled up, so it's on Mike on this one.
I have not been watching enough other ACC footballs. I should have.
You don't need to. Guess what? You could probably take an educated guess. And by educated guess, I mean guess the record.
Virginia Tech?
That's surprisingly not.
Other Virginia?
Surprisingly not also.
Guess the Mason-Dixon line.
And guess above it.
Yeah.
Well, Boston College.
Indeed.
And
that is the current worst team, and they are third in the FBS in most penalties this year with a good 50. Excuse me, that is tied for second with Louisiana Tech.
mhm.
Man, what is in the water in Massachusetts right now?
You ask great questions.
I don't know, but you remember that that team that you root for and the college team that's in the same city as them?
The team that shares a
Pits of
field.
Misery.
Yes. Yeah.
Indeed.
Mhm.
They
Yep.
sit just above Syracuse with 41.
So all of the northern teams in the ACC are doing really well when it comes to being penalized. And that's before conference play really starts.
You know what that means?
We're
Yankee
starting-
Stadium is going to be a really fun game.
Yankee Stadium's going to have more TV timeouts and stoppages than it's going to be a 6-hour game based on penalties alone.
As
You
much
tell
as
me
I
that
love
as
Yankee
I'm
Stadium.
actively trying to find a way to go there and whether I'm staying overnight or not.
Yeah, exactly. As much as I love Yankee Stadium. Yikes.
Yeah,
I don't need a Western Michigan game.
the other thing is that that nice Friday night in the Dome, Mike. We're going to be there till like 1.
I have a 5-minute walk back, so that's not a problem.
Oh yeah, you're also young. Never mind.
I also forgot that Friday. I also forgot that Boston College game was a Friday.
Yeah, you don't want Syracuse BC Friday Night Lights? Come on, man. There's no more enticing game you could possibly want.
Is that on? Oh,
Um,
I
That is on ESPN2, I think.
Oh, that's even worse. I was saying for the sake of the nation, I hope it was on ACC Network, but it is on
No, it's national.
It
It's
is a national game.
Yeah.
Nothing says college football TV money like putting Syracuse Boston College on national television.
There's a demographic for it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's called Sickos Committee at Sickos Committee on Twitter.
Oh God. Yeah. So I believe we did answer the perpetual sickos question, right?
Yeah, is Syracuse good? No, because Syracuse does not itself want to be good.
Now, I think we can talk more about this on the other side of halftime, but I think we may not be as sunk this week as I originally thought, but whatever. We can talk about that later. Right now, we're going to talk about Home Field Apparel, who is your one-stop shop for all vintage collegiate athletic needs in the comfiest fabrics you can find. I guess technically they don't just have collegiate wear. They do have their own brand of whatever they call them that's unbranded besides Home Field and still feels awesome.
It's their core collection.
Ah, there we go.
And also because they're because it is an Indiana company, they are running a limited Colts collection as well.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I feel like we'll see more and more growth from our friends over at Home Field. So yeah, check them out if you haven't at this point. They do have some great Syracuse stuff. I am a proud owner of numerous things. I think my wife lives in that Cuse Auto hoodie. So beyond that, check them out. And oh God, I don't have it pulled up. Cuse 23.
Noon's 23.
Noon's 23. I was close. NUNES 23 for a discount on your first purchase.
That's why I support our friends at Home Field Apparel. We'd like to thank them, as always, for sponsoring the Disloyal Idiots podcast. I don't want to go too far into this podcast also without shouting out the defense, because yes, 31 points is disappointing to give up, but that's not all on them.
It's a very deceiving 31 points.
Yeah.
This felt like, was it 3 years ago where we had a good defense and they looked like shit every game because we just couldn't couldn't get them off the field?
Oh, so 2020, yes.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh, that was 3 years ago. Hey,
yeah, that was indeed. Mm-hmm.
My memory isn't completely shot, but yeah, very, very solid showing by them. I mean, for what you could expect facing the level of talent they had, and they stepped up for it.
Yeah, I think the only thing that was tough to see, and it was very evident for everyone watching the game, is that the defense had a tough time deciding what to do once Klubnik got out of the pocket. And that's a testament to him keeping his eyes downfield and making sure he always had an option. Schrader never got the luxury of that time because he was always sacked before he could escape said pocket. But Klubnik, once he escaped the pocket, first of all, yes, you could say that, contain wise, that's a problem that he should just, if he has to escape the pocket, he should just be taken out before he can do that. But at the same time, he always had an option because from what I noticed, the Clemson wide receivers always did something once he got out of the pocket to make themselves as an available target. And that's something you always want to see in your wide receivers is that if a broken play happens, just don't stand there and continue to run your route. Improvise and adjust in order to help out your quarterback. And you saw that a lot with receivers coming back to the ball, getting away from receivers and improvising to give Klubnik a shot.
Yeah.
And so what that did, because Syracuse usually did have a spy on Klubnik, but if Klubnik escaped, that spy was stuck between helping out in coverage and crashing.
Yeah, and that was a weird. I think I mentioned it in the Slack during the game, but having to worry about Klubnik once he broke the pocket was not on my bingo card.
No.
I was amazed at how much we did flush him, and on the flip side was amazed at how well he was performing, on the move. And like you said, I guess his receivers showing for him and giving him an option really helps. And, that's something our guys can get with experience. Maybe they just watched the game film of this as to what the Clemson wideouts were doing, but that was very frustrating to see the D-line doing what they needed to do and still giving up yardage, which that's another testament to the level of talent that we were playing against versus the Purdue game for example, or any of the other games we've played this year.
Yeah, I think somewhat surprisingly, and maybe that's also just a testament to what a lot of people have seen this year about Clemson's offensive line regression. But this was the best game, I think, this season that the defensive line had. And yes, that might be also, again, like a lot of people have noticed that the reason for the Clemson losses against Duke and Florida State, a large part of that was on the offensive lines of Clemson.
Yeah.
But it's still a highly recruited offensive line, no matter what you say. So, highly touted in terms of the talent that is perceived to be there just in the locker room. And so to see the defensive line show up with a performance like that is at least promising.
Yeah, I think Shaking the Southland actually in their post-game article may have summed it up the best, referring to Clemson. This week they made a few mistakes that could have been very costly, but Syracuse made costlier mistakes, and the Tigers prevailed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like
this was a game that Clemson probably, if Syracuse was going to pull off another upset, this was the game to do it. Because Clemson looked vulnerable at times. Yeah. However, Syracuse did not take advantage. And you could say I don't like using dropped interceptions as a missed opportunity because those are hard enough to come by. And so, yes, if you drop interceptions, sure, but you should not be relying on that to win you games. What you should be relying to win you games, and what we've already, harped at the beginning of this podcast, is playing clean football, which is not committing penalties and not committing turnovers. And Syracuse did both of those in bunches.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be a good one to put behind us.
Yeah,
I think it's a good, for what this team is currently, it's a good point in the season to get a game like this in and out of their system, because this week against UNC, who I believe is currently ranked 15th, unless that changed, they were on a bye this week, so I can't imagine they moved too much in the rankings. But Syracuse is traveling in their first road test in conference to face North Carolina and open as 6.5-point dogs.
The Tar Heels.
UNC is 14 now.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Tar Heels are currently 14. Yeah.
So they moved up by not playing. Good work.
Yep, they moved up, largely helped by the fact that Utah did suffer that upset to Oregon State. So
Yeah, they dropped 8 spots. So
Yeah, that'll do it.
well, that's because losing to the Pac-2 is necessarily frowned upon. But let's also kind of zoom out and put this into perspective, because I know a lot of fans were angry about this game. And you're right, there are things to be angry about because, like we keep mentioning, this is a game that Syracuse probably should have won if not for all the mistakes that it itself made.
Well, I want to qualify that. I don't want to say they should have won it, but they could have.
Yeah, they could have. Yeah. Okay. That's actually better. That's a better statement indeed to say that Syracuse could have won this game if it weren't for all the mistakes they made. But let's also zoom back and realize that at the beginning of this season and just in general, we knew as a fan base that this current 3-game stretch that Syracuse is on, Syracuse was very likely to lose all 3 of these games.
And there wasn't a single person in our predictions that said they were going to win one of these games, was there? I think all 5
If
predicted
if there was, I would like to talk to that person.
Wasn't you, was it, Mike?
for the predictions, we do the weekly predictions. We do yes.
Oh, okay.
I did
Not-
drink
not
the orange
for your
Kool-Aid
official
this
preview.
week.
No, we're
did
talking about the beginning of the
Oh
season.
yeah, the preseason perspective.
Preseason. Yes, preseason. I said loss.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because I mean the weekly. I think you, me, and maybe Max all predicted a win. Because I'm ever eternally optimistic until it comes to the offensive line. But yeah, I mean that this is a death stretch of let's put all 3 tough games right next to each other.
And
Again,
yeah, and remember the next 3 games are also on the road, so this is going to be very, very tough because you're going to a hostile environment in Chapel Hill. You're going to an even more hostile environment in Tallahassee, and if you can believe it, an even more hostile environment than that in Blacksburg.
Yeah,
So,
thankfully that hostile environment in Blacksburg seems to be
less hostile than normal.
I mean, it may be hostile, but on the field it's going to be a lot less hostile. Yeah.
We say that, but then Pitt happened, and maybe Pitt's just that bad.
I feel like the entire ACC is full-blown sickos committee at this point.
And this may be the case.
Good.
Hopefully Syracuse can remedy that.
Yeah, that's so.
But it also just goes back to the one thing that I'm truly scared about. It is the injuries.
Yeah.
Because the one thing you wanted to get out of this 3-game stretch is to escape with as little as injuries as possible. But you already have Gadsden and David Wallaba out for this season. Who knows when you're going to get Trevor Pena and Isaiah Jones back? Kalen Ellis, thankfully, is back, but you would hope that he hasn't been rushed too quickly back. Now you have Dan Valori, who proved himself to be a weapon, now out for a who knows amount of time. And you're suddenly dropping out of options on the offensive side. And you've got to now also hope that doesn't trickle over to the defensive side as well, because the defense has stayed healthy. Thankfully, the defense has stayed healthy. But on the offensive side, Syracuse is quickly losing options.
Damn
and
good, Mike. Can't hear me knocking on wood for you there. There you go.
There we go. I should probably do that as well. The offense is quickly running out of options. So much so that you saw Darryl Gill get a significant amount of time on the field as well on the wideouts. Not saying that Gill isn't going to be a talent, because he definitely has, the speed, the natural speed to eventually be a talent. But right now he's pretty green. And so if Syracuse wants to take advantage of that weak ACC, it's got to stay healthy and figure out a way to get some of those guys who are long-term injuries back as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of Gill at this point is kind of brown from last year, right?
Yeah.
Like there's upside, but and there's speed, but I didn't want to be. I'm glad we weren't forced into the point where we needed to use Brown last year. And now if we're forced to use Gill, it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Now, one quizzical thing, and for anybody who's listening, sorry, we keep going back to stuff that's happened, but did I miss a memo, or does DeMarcus Adams not believe in playing wideout much anymore?
That's also a good point.
Like, I didn't see him out there for a whole ton of snaps.
But also, weirdly, if you can't trust him to track the punts well enough,
yeah, I'll give you that. But like, I don't know. What we're down to for this receiving core it's crazy. Like
it is pretty much all freshmen, redshirt freshmen, and walk-ons.
Well, and then size-wise, you have Alfred at 6'6", 210, and everybody else is 6'2" or shorter. That's healthy. Oh, Gill is 6'3", sorry. But like, there's not any other size on the roster.
You know what this also goes back to? 2020.
Yeah.
Don't.
I mean, we're already well ahead of. We're at least 3 wins ahead of 2020, so we're there.
Yeah, the only thing that hasn't happened yet is the quarterback getting injured.
Listen, Christian, it doesn't matter how much wood you knock on. That always happens. It's been 10 years at least since we've had a QB play every single game.
This is true. Thank you, Ryan Nassib.
Jesus, that was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Or did Terrell Hunt play all the games in the Texas Bowl year?
No, somebody else. Was that an Andrew Robinson?
So it was either that or an Austin Wilson.
Yeah, there were things happening that year, I believe.
And in 2014, it all went to crap.
Well,
Mike, you weren't here when we were talking about the 2014 Syracuse NC State game. That was a trip last week. I loved that so much.
That was all of us realizing, wow, NC State was bad with good talent, and what happened to stupidity, and how do we all?
Mike, did you get a chance to listen back to that podcast last week?
I did not yet. I will have to.
But let me just say that there was a reason why that 2014 Syracuse NC State game was weird, especially with like NC State bad with good talent. Why is that? And you might start to quickly realize.
Oh, wait, hold on. You were the one that comment in the Slack during the game. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't put the. Oh, wow, Christian, it's all full circle.
But you also might realize, Mike, that a certain person that you are very familiar with as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan has something to do with that game.
Well, I'm sure you're not going to spoil it now, so I will find out.
I kind of do because I want to see your reaction.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, fine.
Let's just say it's the reason why a lot of Pittsburgh Steelers fans are dissatisfied with this season so far.
Really?
Because that guy was the offensive coordinator for NC State in 2014 with guys like Jacoby Brissett and MVS on that team.
Yeah. So when you at 12:33 on Saturday said, "What is this Matt Canada play calling?" I forgot that you weren't in on that conversation. I thought this was a callback to last week when we went down this rabbit hole on Matt Canada somehow screwed that talent up. And we faced figured 2 or 3 years in a row.
And then he went to LSU.
Yeah. Crazy.
For those who aren't watching the podcast right now, Mike is internalizing deep pain.
For anyone who's seen
when you've seen as many jet sweeps as I have every single week, it doesn't even matter if they're executed well. I just immediately gets flashbacks of every 5-yard loss I have seen over the last 3 years.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
Well, luckily Syracuse doesn't have Irv Phillips anymore to tempt them into jet sweeps. Steve rolled his eyes so hard.
who was it? George McDonald that was the OC. That was like
Yeah.
Oh god.
It was him and probably Tim Lester.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was George McDonald and Tim Lester who did what I always hate, and especially because it never worked. Wide receiver bubble screen.
That's what I was trying to get at. Was who was it with the bubble screens? And McDonald was the.
That was McDonald and Lester.
Yeah, I think I had tried to scrub that from my memory, but
Mhm.
Yep. Yeah, good old XFL legend Tim Lester. So, yeah, wow.
Well, luckily Beck is not done that.
Yes. No, Beck. I mean, Beck had some questionable play calling sequences this week, but
yeah, I'm personally
that was an ugly game.
Yeah,
because me personally, and this is actually something we can talk about to futurify this podcast instead of pacify this confess, not pacify but pastify this this podcast, is that what we know from Syracuse and what we've always asked from Syracuse is that in order to get the best out of a team, you want to put the ball in the hands of your star. And we saw that massive switch when Sean Tucker started to break out. And that's when we saw considerate efforts from Syracuse to put Sean Tucker in space. And it's because he was the star. And he showed the star quality. And so the main objective was, hey, let's make sure our star player has all the options that he needs in order to succeed, because that is also going to be our best form of success. And now I think we're at the point where we can say that about LeQuinn Allen as well.
No, we were at the point where we could have said that about Dan Villari. Run the entire offense around giving Dan Villari the ball.
But with Villari injured for an unknown amount of time.
Okay, I guess we'll fall back on the real good running back. That's fine.
Let's fall back on the guy who got the number 1 jersey, because Dino never gives out a number 1 jersey, remember?
Yeah.
Dino, this is something also, like, think back in the Dino Babers time at Syracuse. No one in the Dino Babers era at Syracuse has ever gotten the number 1 jersey. LeQuinn is the only person. And there was a report from the broadcast team during the Army game about how Dino, specifically during his time as head coach, gives out the number 1 jersey to special talents. Yeah. And LeQuinn Allen is...
Hard Carter wore it in 22 to give you a gauge for quality of who ends up allowed to wear it.
I'm sorry?
I said LeQuinn Allen. Jihad Carter wore it last year, at least part of the season. I don't believe he wore it for the entire season, but he is on the roster as number 1. So,
or is that just Syracuse.com, or is that just Cuse.com misreading his 11 jersey?
Could also be. And then the only other, what year did Dino start with us?
16.
Yeah. So the only other was Sean Riley listed, Brisley as well.
Oh, Brisley Esteem.
Yep. And that was his senior year. So similar kind of concept.
Yeah.
Standout senior talent. Sean Riley, senior year, same deal. So, yeah, it seems like it's a pretty...
but, again, notice those names. Brisley Esteem got it when he was a senior. Sean Riley got it when he was a senior.
Yeah.
Jihad Carter Jr., but, pretty well established.
Yep.
Allen is a sophomore who, before this year, got 1 game of significant playing time.
Right.
Look at what he's done now. No, I mean, it appears that the time away from the team hasn't done anything to him in terms of his rust. So I think we can all put those worries that we had at the beginning of the season out the window. Yes, the run blocking this game helped a lot, but we've also seen now that once Allen gets into space, he's a problem to stop.
Yeah.
And so now I think Well, what we have to see from Jason Beck is let's give him space. Let's find out a way to give him space. And because if you don't have Arondé Gadsden, if you don't have Isaiah Jones, what else are you going to do?
Well, and we saw it happen a couple of times where using him creatively worked out very well. That touchdown was, him out of the backfield. So, like, we can use him, not just handing the ball off to him, and it seems to work successfully. Why don't we use it more? Or why don't we use something to set that up, or that to set something else up? And
and why not just run the ball more? Yes, I get it. Syracuse was down for most of that game, so naturally, a pass first offense is going to be the natural thing that you want to go to. But what has Dino always predicated this his offense in general on? It's established the run first.
Yeah.
And yes, no matter how much the OC changes, your head coach is going to have some say on both sides of the ball. And Dino has always preached that what he wants to see from his offense is the run to be established in order for the pass to open up. So why not run the ball more on first down? I get if you're down, you're going to want to pass. But if you're going to pass the ball on first down and then run the ball on second down, why not run it on first down? Make the second down pass, make the pass that you're eventually going to do a lot easier.
Well, and then also we saw the I think I called it the inverse George DeLeon.
Yes.
Who was the OC before either of you were born, probably, was the old run, pass, punt offense. We saw a bunch of pass, run, punt. And I was like, what? How were you doing that? That doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I don't know. It's almost like, and as a first-year OC, sometimes it happens, but I almost wonder if Beck kind of got in his own head a little on the play calling.
I can see that, yeah.
So maybe this week against UNC, we see that, like, see the the first big game jitters kind of settle out a little.
And I think we have to talk about this UNC game now because we are 52 minutes into this podcast and we haven't talked enough about this UNC game. Mike, as much as we love to talk about the defense, there were some issues in the secondary. Jeremiah Wilson and Isaiah Johnson didn't have their best games. Pass interference calls, getting beat down the sideline by receivers. A couple of safeties as well didn't have their best game, so much so that we saw a lot of Jaden Gould and Miles Farmer in the secondary
and Jaden Bellamy
and Jaden Bellamy as
Jeremiah.
well to try and get some new looks in the secondary. Cade Klubnik's not the best quarterback right now in the ACC. That goes to Drake May, who's a projected top 2 pick in the draft. And that's who Syracuse faces next week.
I mean, by a lot of metric standards, May's not the best quarterback in the ACC right now after these first 4 games. But we know he 100% has he's got.
He is going. Unless somehow a team at 2 wants to keep their pick and has a quarterback.
Yeah,
he is going number 2 in this draft.
Yeah, and if a team in the NFL is playing bad enough to have the number 2 pick, they probably don't have a quarterback good enough to pass over Drake May.
Unless the Bears somehow get their crap together. And by crap,
that's implying the Bears don't get the number 1 pick again.
I mean, that's probably going to the Cardinals still.
TBD.
Bears, Cardinals.
So
perpetual disappointment.
Which 3 teams are getting relegated this year?
Pitt, BC, and Virginia Tech.
Yeah. But yeah, Drake May is very good at throwing the football.
That's how. Wait, is that how relegation works? The bottom 3 teams get sent to the Pac-2.
That's how the pack continues. Each of the 4.
We solved it. We solved it, guys.
It's a 12-man conference.
top 4 teams, top 4 leagues. Your bottom 3 teams get shipped off into a conference, and then it's just a lottery for the rest of the pack.
Oh god. Oh, that would be so great. That would be amazing.
God, I really wanted to talk more about UNC, but this is going to be the Drake May show. We know this.
I mean, do we have other concerns going into this outside of what he's going to do to our secondary?
Stay healthy.
Correct. But like, if for some reason Rocky Long can do something to make the secondary hold up to the scrutiny,
it goes back to you know what's going to go back to, Steve. You know what it's going to go back to.
Yeah, I do. And I think the answer is they will hold up better than they did last week.
The offensive line is going to be the unit that makes or break this team. I've said it this entire year, and I know Steve and Mike can back me up on this.
Mm-hmm.
This team lives and dies by the offensive line. And yes, ball penalties had a lot to help in this. The pass block this week was not good enough to help Syracuse.
Now, this also said, I've been meaning to try and get this in somewhere. Garrett Schrader's getting back to his old kind of happy feet ways a little, and I don't like it. Because there were probably, I don't know how many sacks he had, but at least 3 of them were him either not stepping up in the pocket or flushing when there was a pocket and just trying to get out around the guy. Like, keep wanting to say Joe Moore. Mark Petrie had his guy and was riding him, and Schrader tried to get behind him and around him. And it made no sense whatsoever. And then he got taken down. And I'm like, he's, and I get it when you don't have the confidence in the guys in front of you, but also like step up into the pocket or don't run directly into the defensive player. Those are my keys to the game. That do better things.
Mike, you weren't here for last year when I had my big epiphany and realization moment about what happened at the end of last season. But Steve and I both discovered this at the exact same time. And it might be time to implement this strategy once again. And that strategy is run away from where the protection is.
Yep.
Because what we realized at the end of last season is that, hey, guess what? Syracuse actually had some positive plays when they ran away from the protection.
It seems dumb, but it worked.
So does Syracuse go back to that?
Sure. Hey, if it works, it works. So we'll see.
That is a test that's going to happen at Chapel Hill in Kenan Stadium this coming weekend. It is another noon game that fans are going to be so excited to get into right after college game day.
Yeah.
God, Pat McAfee's going to have an aneurysm trying to lead into that
it's
game.
It's a 3:30 game.
No, is it? No, wow, I am sorely mistaken if it is.
Yeah, because I had something later in the day. Yeah, it's definitely.
It is indeed a 3:30 game. How very nice.
Yeah.
So it is not the immediate lead-in, but it is a 3:30 game that will be happening on Saturday. To whet your appetite for the middle of the brutal 3-game stretch. And Syracuse, if Syracuse wins, great. If Syracuse loses, this is probably what you expected.
Mm-hmm. Sounds about right.
Gentlemen, any final thoughts to wrap up this week?
Good.
Actually, we do have final thoughts because we are this podcast. How do goalkeepers make saves?
I don't think we should ask Jason Smith that.
Because unfortunately, Syracuse did lose to Duke in men's soccer 5-3 down in Durham this week. Second loss of the season for Syracuse. And this time the offense looked pretty good. It's just that, fortunately, goals went in for the opposing side.
If there was a definition of a howler, that would be Jason Smith having one. But in general, like this is a Duke team that last year was supposed to be doing what Syracuse did and lifting that trophy. So it's a talented side. The entirety of the ACC is stupid talented. We'll see SU drop from that number 7 spot, but I wouldn't be surprised if they stay relevant in the conversation, and they're still proving they can play with these teams.
Don't
They
worry.
have not lost at home yet.
True.
Drew
So-
still undefeated at home. Only losses on the road to Cornell and Duke. Good thing next year it should also be pretty good. Oh wait, Stanford's coming next year.
Yeah, let's add them to the schedule. That's a great idea. Was
Gotta-
the ACC stupid in soccer before? Well, let's make them dumber.
Now, the only question is, will that be here, California, or Dallas?
You ask great questions.
North Dakota.
I was going to say that. No, it's South Dakota.
Oh yeah,
It's South Dakota. That's where Syracuse men's basketball is playing Oregon.
that's what I was trying to go for.
Yeah.
Why not?
You know what? Actually, we should end on that. Because again, if you can't tell, we kind of make these outlines for this podcast on the fly. John Rothstein attended Syracuse men's basketball practice this week, and this was, I believe, the first week that Syracuse men's basketball got back up to, full practice, and it's, full sail. We're getting closer and closer to basketball season, and we got some early looks onto what exactly might be happening with Syracuse. First of all, Rothstein basically confirmed with Autry that it's going to be man-to-man defense this year.
Whatever will Bill Raftery do?
Find out a new way to start Syracuse games?
Go back to what he said like 20 years ago or 30 years ago?
If he can think that far back, yes.
It's all just a mush of onions in there right now.
Rothstein's projected start at 5 is basically what we expected. It's what many fans and what most of us on the site expected. That starting 5 of J.J. Starling, Judah Mintz, Chris Bell, Benny Williams, and Mahim the Cloud. And I think the most interesting thing, and I think the news that a lot of Syracuse fans want to hear, is that Rothstein is reporting that Mintz's shooting looks vastly improved and that he looks more confident to shoot as well.
Could it have gotten worse?
There's always a possibility. But it looks like, at least hopefully for Mintz's sake and for Syracuse's sake, that it hasn't.
Nice. I mean, it's good to see that the thing he needed to work on is actually the thing he worked on. We've seen that happen in the past where it's like, hey, this guy needs to focus on one thing to get better, and then comes back and it's the same thing. So
Marek Dolezaj gaining weight.
no, Marek Dolezaj physically could not gain weight. The amount of pizza that man ate, he should have not been a rail.
Oh,
Now, there's a question we need to get answered. Will Autry continue the post-game pizza tradition?
Huh. Gino is Gino and Joe still throwing or not Gino and Joe's
Mario and Salvos. Where'd you get Gina and Joe's from?
That was an old Liverpool like chain in Liverpool. They had like 2 or 3 shops. I don't know if it's still there or not, but
Guess what? We somehow squeezed it in at the end, but Steve is old.
yep, here we are. I think we hit it around the 40th mark or 40-minute mark too.
But we definitively hit it at the hour and 3 mark, which is all we need to do to end this podcast. Thank you all so much for listening to the Disloyal Idiots podcast. As usual, we're back here on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter / Periscope, if that's still a thing. I forget already. Facebook, but Twitter, Twitch, YouTube. That's my ancient old technology. Thank you also for watching. We're usually here on your streaming platform of choice on 8 p.m. live on Sundays. If you're listening on your podcast platform of choice, thank you so much for listening in, and make sure you rate, review, subscribe, follow, leave a comment so we can trick the algorithm into expanding the good old Ottoman Empire. As always, if you're listening on the website as well, thank you all so much for clicking on the article on newsmagician.com. And as well, you can always check out our great articles there as we lead into whatever game is that week. And of course, this week it is UNC. I'm Christian Guzman. That's Steve Howard. That's Mike Ostrowski. Thank you all so much for watching, and go Orange.
Go Orange.
Go Orange.